This is a question that even Jewish rabbis were asking even before Christ. Philo of Alexandria is a Jewish rabbi, and he concludes that if you read these passages literally, you're going to end up with Zeus, not Yahweh. And so he teaches us how to read the stories. Let's call them stories. They're story. I'm not saying they're stories because these things didn't happen. I'm saying they're stories because they're narrated events, and in the narration, we can read them as crass literalists, which modernity taught us, and you end up with a monster god. Or you can read them through the lens of that they're teaching us lessons, sometimes just negative lessons. Don't be like these guys. Don't say these things about God, you know. So the early church picks up on this, and you can see especially how, while Jesus in the Gospel of John, and then also Peter, Paul, and John in their epistles, that they're reading these books as prefiguring the much greater story of Jesus. So when you see anybody suffering in the Old Testament, the Emmaus way of reading, Jesus says that Moses, the prophets, and all the scriptures are pointing to me, to my passion and my glorification. So to read it the Emmaus way is to say, how does the suffering in the Old Testament prefigure, or it's like a movie trailer, to the much greater suffering of Jesus? How do the victories in the Old Testament, even dubious ones, point to the much greater victory of Jesus, where not one person needs to die besides him in order for the world to be restored? So they're all imperfectly and in a model sense pointing to him. And that's how the early church preached from the Old Testament. They preached the gospel from the Old Testament. So here's what I do with kids on that, and it works for adults too. I say, God is like Jesus. He's exactly like Jesus. He's always been exactly like Jesus. That's a Brian Zondism. And then, so Jesus shows us what God is like, and he tells us what God is like. So I have them memorized John 10:10. It is the thief who steals, kills, and destroys. But I, Jesus, God in the flesh, I've come to grant life, and that more abundantly. So now we take John 10:10 into the Old Testament, and we say, God is like Jesus. What do you see in this story? If there's stealing, killing, or destroying, that's the thief. It could be the thief is our own sin. It could be our rebellion. It could be the way we bring Babylon down on our own heads. It could be the way plagues come. But sin did that. The wages of sin is death. But the free gift of God, the eternal and abundant life, that's from God. Where do you see that in the story? So we use John 10:10 very simply as a discernment tool of the nature of God. And then you have to ask, but why, when it says this, when it says God did this or God said this, and it sounds like the thief, how do you explain that? Why does it say God did it? And this is where I borrow from Pete Enns, who put it this way: because God let his children tell the story. And his children didn't know God the way Jesus did. Jesus gets the last word, but they were allowed to tell the story. And in telling the story, my friend Anna, who's 9, she says sometimes the narrator gets confused. This is a 9-year-old. And so she wades into these gruesome stories. She goes into Jeremiah, and here's how her mind works. She says, okay, what's happening in this story? Jerusalem was doing wicked things, and then Babylon comes along and they put a siege around Jerusalem, and they start destroying the city. And even the prophets saying, God is doing this, God is doing this. So she reads it and she goes, well, John 10:10, it's the thief who steals, kills, and destroys. Jesus comes that we would have life. Then why does Jeremiah say that God did it? Well, because God let Jeremiah tell the story. Okay, but then where's Jesus in the story? Is Jesus sending the catapults? No. Is Jesus burning the city? No. Where is Jesus? And then she remembers, oh yeah, Jesus wept over Jerusalem. He loved the people. He didn't want them destroyed. He said they'd be destroyed. He didn't want them destroyed. So she goes back to Jeremiah and says, now where is Jesus in the story? And she goes, oh, there he is. He's in the tears of Jeremiah. I'm like, oh my goodness, you've nailed it. And this is exactly what Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great rabbi, said about the prophets. Jesus, it's the love of God is in the tears of the prophets, and it's not his heart to destroy. So that's a little preview of a More Christlike Word, which is coming out in July.